On April 9, 2019, outside Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in Eldoret, a sixth-year medical student was attacked in broad daylight. His murderer had driven 300 kilometers. He brought an axe. What happened next? Welcome to Lost Crimes. Subscribe to go to what we came for, the deadly axe outside the hospital. Ivy Wangechi was born in 1994 in Murang'a County, the youngest in a close, supportive family that backed her academic ambitions. When her studies took her to Eldoret in Uasin Gishu County, she joined a town shaped by universities and the energy of students chasing professional futures. In Eldoret, Ivy enrolled at Moi University School of Medicine. Classmates and mentors remembered a warm, focused trainee who performed strongly in coursework and ward duties. Her clinical rotations at Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital placed her inside a national referral center where standards are high and expectations higher. That same hospital perimeter would become the scene of the crime. Just outside its gates, on a routine day, in a familiar space, Ivy was attacked without warning. The place where she trained to heal became the place where her life was taken. She came from a deeply close-knit family where dedication and perseverance were everyday values. Ivy's mother, a teacher, nurtured her discipline and stoked the ambition that carried her toward medicine. The family's hopes and pride gathered around Ivy, with loving siblings already picturing the graduation celebration ahead, a milestone that would honor years of shared sacrifice and belief in her future. By contrast, Naftali Kinuthia, born in 1990, worked as a systems administrator at a betting company. Colleagues knew him as capable yet reserved, more solitary than social. His link to Ivy traced back to childhood. They had been neighbors in Murang'a, a bond that thinned when the Wangechi family later moved to support Ivy's education.
Years afterward, he re-emerged through social media. Her profile surfaced in his People You May Know, and that digital coincidence became the spark of a one-sided obsession.
According to testimony, he began pressing unwanted affection through gifts and money transfers, offers Ivy refused outright or, at times, accepted under pressure and fear. She set boundaries and said no consistently. He chose to treat that no as temporary, not final. The dynamic curdled into harassment on multiple occasions, a forewarning of danger. In the end, Ivy's refusal was never honored, and that disregard spiraled into gender-based violence that shattered a family and stole a future. She embodied a bright future. As a sixth-year medical student, she was not only gifted and diligent, but also outgoing and joyful, known for kindness that lifted wards and classrooms alike. Her laugh was a familiar sound in the corridors of Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, where, just months from graduation, she was already living the work she loved, helping and healing. She dreamed of specializing, serving her community, and honoring the family whose support carried her this far. But that near-realized promise collided with a brutal reality. The same warmth and presence that drew friends and mentors also attracted unwanted attention. The manner of her death sits in stark contrast to the compassion that defined her vocation, leaving an irreparable wound for all who believed in her future. The problems between them flowed from a one-sided pursuit that hardened into control. After reconnecting during Ivy's university years, Naftali Kinuthia, by then financially stable, began offering support and sending costly gifts. Testimony described money transfers and purchases, including a smartphone. At times, Ivy refused, and at times she accepted under pressure or fear. She set boundaries and said no. He treated that no as negotiable. The dynamic curdled into harassment on multiple occasions, an escalation that would end in gender-based violence and a family's grief. The dynamic bred sharply different expectations. Naftali Kinuthia nurtured a deep romantic fixation and treated his financial support as proof of a bond. Ivy saw him only as a friend and occasional benefactor, with no obligation to reciprocate. As she asserted her independence in her final university years and created distance, he read that boundary setting as a threat to his sense of entitlement over her. Tension hardened into repeated arguments. Ivy's refusals met his persistent advances and rising frustration. According to reports and testimony, she chose to limit contact to reduce misunderstanding and pressure. Instead of accepting that no, he grew angrier. That widening disconnect, coupled with a grievance that she owed him emotionally, primed a tragedy, turning fixation into the conditions for fatal violence. In early April 2019, as Ivy neared 25, she contacted Kinuthia for help toward a birthday gathering. He sent 3,000 Kenyan shillings, about $30. What happened next became the seed of his grievance narrative. He later claimed that after receiving the money, Ivy blocked him on social media and by phone. Whether or not events unfolded exactly as he framed them, he chose to interpret this as being used, and he let that story, his story, ignite anger that would soon spiral into irrevocable harm. That moment flipped a long simmering tension into an active, dangerous fixation. Naftali Kinuthia moved from heartbreak to planning, setting in motion the pursuit that would culminate on April 9, 2019, outside Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. The social media block was not just rejection, it became the spark that turned obsession into lethal intent. After communication was cut, he tried to reach Ivy through mutual friends. Every attempt failed. She maintained a clear distance, and he refused to accept it. Consumed by grievance, on April 8, 2019, he traveled more than 300 kilometers from Thika to Eldoret without telling her he was coming. By his own testimony, he carried 2,000 Kenyan shillings he said he still intended to give her, and an axe he claimed was for protection against thieves on the road. He said his purpose was to wish her a happy birthday and seek reconciliation. But arriving unannounced, after being blocked, and carrying a weapon is not reconciliation, it is confrontation. What followed was a decision driven by rage and entitlement, and it would end in tragedy. On April 9, 2019, outside Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in Eldoret, the tension finally broke. Reporting based on eyewitness testimony and the accused's own account outlines the sequence like this. Having traveled to Eldoret after communication was cut, Naftali Kinuthia waited near the hospital environs. When he saw Ivy Wangechi walking with colleagues after her clinical duties, he approached, saying he wanted to talk and hand her the 2,000 shillings he still carried. She declined contact, and the money made clear she wanted no further interaction, and moved toward a vehicle with a fellow medical student, identified in court as Dr. Andrew Koinange. Watching her enter the car, his jealousy and anger surged. In his own narration, he retrieved an axe from his vehicle and ran toward Ivy, initiating a brutal daylight attack at the hospital gate. Witnesses described blows with the axe, panicked screams, and bystanders scattering before boda riders and security intervened. Several accounts also noted he produced a knife during the assault. The morning's routine shattered in seconds. Metal struck metal, voices pleaded for help, stones were hurled to stop him, and the attacker was finally subdued. What Kinuthia framed as hurt and grievance had crossed into planned, lethal violence on a public street outside a national referral hospital. That morning, in full view of stunned witnesses, after seeing Ivy move toward a colleague's vehicle, Naftali Kinuthia rushed to his own car, retrieved an axe, and closed the distance. What had been simmering grievance flipped into action in seconds. Without a word, he launched a savage assault at the vehicle by the hospital gate, delivering multiple blows. Eyewitnesses told the court he struck Ivy, circled back, and struck again as people screamed and scattered. Several also saw him brandish a knife during the attack. Ivy's screams mingled with those of bystanders as chaos erupted outside Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. A doctor on duty rushed out. An ambulance wheeled her to casualty, where she was pronounced dead. The place where she trained to save lives became the scene of an irretrievable loss. The brutality of the act triggered an immediate public response. Boda Boda riders and other witnesses hurled stones to stop the assailant and subdued him until police arrived. Officers then rescued him from the mob and rushed him injured to the hospital under guard. Chaos swallowed the hospital gate. Witnesses, stunned and enraged, turned on Naftali Kinuthia, beating him and threatening to lynch him in a surge of visceral, street-level justice. Police forced their way through, rescued him from the mob, and placed him under arrest. In a bitter irony not lost on the public, he was treated for his injuries inside the very Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, where Ivy had trained and where she had just died. Meanwhile, Ivy's body was taken to the hospital mortuary for post-mortem. A forensic examination, reported by national outlets, found severe craniocerebral trauma from multiple axe blows as the cause of death. The graduation her family had been planning gave way, overnight, to funeral arrangements. Grief poured into the streets and onto social platforms, hardening into a single demand: justice. Investigators quickly assembled evidence pointing to planning and intent. A journey of more than 300 kilometers with an axe on board, a claimed self-defense purpose that sat uneasily beside the weapon's use. Eyewitness statements describing the sequence, and the accused's own remarks framing his actions in terms of heartbreak and grievance. From those pieces, a case took shape, one the country would follow, closely and bitterly, all the way to court. On April 12, 2019, prosecutors moved forward. Naftali Kinuthia was charged with murder contrary to Section 203, as read with Section 204 of the Penal Code, and held in remand as investigators compiled the file, autopsy, scene work, and early witness statements. A magistrate had already ordered his continued detention in mid-April, while police finalized inquiries. The courtroom timeline stretched. The High Court at Eldoret before Justice S.M. Githinji was punctuated by adjournments that pushed hearings back by months. Even so, when the matter sat, witnesses, friends, clinicians, and bystanders reconstructed the morning outside MTRH and the obsessive dynamic that preceded it. Testimony placed an axe and, at points, a knife in the attacker's hands. Multiple witnesses described repeated blows as terrified voices rose around the hospital gate. Forensics later tied Ivy's blood to the axe, and the post-mortem concluded she died of hypovolemic shock from deep, penetrating neck wounds. When his turn came, March 2023, Kinuthia offered a cold rationale: rejection, jealousy, rage. He acknowledged retrieving the axe and said he was overwhelmed by anger, a framing he paired with claims of diminished control. Coverage recorded his expressions of regret but not exoneration. On October 26, 2023, the court found him guilty of murder. Justice Githinji rejected provocation and relationship defenses, calling the conduct conscious and calculated, noting the selection and sharpening of a lethal weapon and the targeting of the head and neck. Sentencing followed on December 14, 2023, 40 years imprisonment, a punishment the judge said fit the brutality and the harm inflicted on an innocent soul, closing a case Kenya had watched bitterly for years. On December 14, 2023, Justice Stephen Githinji sentenced Naftali Kinuthia to 40 years in prison. In his ruling, the court underscored the brutal and premeditated nature of the killing and dismissed the defenses advanced. Ivy's family called the outcome justice, a measure of relief after years of grief. Rights groups and national media framed the judgment as a clear line in the sand against gender-based violence and femicide. Romance is not a defense. Murder carries severe consequences. Ivy's killing ignited national outrage and became a symbol in the fight against femicide. Demonstrations and campus vigils, many under the hashtag Stop Killing Women, demanded stronger laws, faster protection mechanisms, and real accountability for harassment and threats. The case surfaced hard questions: how persistence gets normalized as romance, how rejection is wrongly treated as provocation, and how untreated obsession can metastasize into violence. Her legacy endures in annual remembrances, university awareness drives, and continued references to her case in media and courtrooms as a turning point that forced Kenya to confront a crisis of violence against women. Though the story is tragic, it remains catalytic, fueling cultural and legal demands so that futures like Ivy Wangechi's are protected, not extinguished. I wish Ivy's death could be just a sacrifice so that no other girls die. Ivy Wangechi's mother, Winfred, said, "She speaks for many families mourning daughters in Kenya today." Ivy was not a headline. She was a beloved daughter, a loyal friend, and a brilliant mind on the verge of healing others. Her future was taken by an obsession that could not accept a simple word, no. Her story forces an uncomfortable truth into view. Violence grows in silence, when harassment is normalized, when boundaries are mocked, when love is treated like a debt. But Ivy's legacy is more than loss. It is a catalyst. Her name helped wake a nation. So the question becomes practical and urgent. What can we do now to stop the next Ivy from being harmed? Believe and act on early reports of stalking and threats. Treat no as final. Support campus and workplace protocols that document harassment. Intervene as safe bystanders. Make it easier and safer for victims to seek help. Share your ideas and resources below so someone watching tonight finds a path to safety. If you or someone you know is facing harassment or threats, reach out to local hotlines, campus counseling, trusted clinicians, or legal aid in your area. And if this story moved you, subscribe so these cases aren't forgotten. So together we keep pushing for a world where rejection is met not with violence, but with respect.